Okay. Well, welcome back. I hope some people were able to join tonight. So tonight I'll be once again working on the Game of Life by John Conway. Um, I'm pretty excited for the changes that we have going on tonight. Uh, should be should be a good one, I think. So if you go to my GitHub, you can look at the issues, and that's github.com/eserver/cellular automata, uh, and that'll get you here. Um, so I put in some issues myself. This is just to keep me on track tonight, so that I don't go too all over the place. And so we're going to be working on these things tonight. Okay, so the first thing that I really want to work on is I really want to look at the application window that we currently have. So what we have, oh, I probably have it commented out right now. Yep, sure do. So this is one thing that I don't like about Qt Creator is most IDEs that I've worked in, if you do a highlight like this and you hit the control /, it'll comment both of those lines from the beginning of the lines. Instead, this does a block quote, and I'm sure that's configurable, but it's just kind of annoying to me right now. So we're going to get rid of this test code here because we don't need it anymore. I think we've determined that it works. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and create a new C++ class. We're going to call that C++ class world. Going to have a base class of object, I believe. Yeah, so we're going to separate functionality from data. This is a common thing done in web development now. You've got your HTML side, which is your display, mixed with, and then you have CSS in the background for how that display markup looks. Sorry, HTML defines the structure, CSS defines how it looks, and the JavaScript defines the functionality. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate out the problem, which is this cellular world that we have. We're going to separate that from the viewport into it. And how we're going to do that is we're going to create a world class that will handle this will actually be static. So we'll be able to call the functions within there to make changes to the world. So if a cell moves from point A to point B, we'll be able to call events in there that will in turn notify the game board to say, hey, I've updated, and then the game board will be able to update in turn. So that's what we're planning to do with this. May or may not work. I think it adds a lot of it simplifies things later on. Okay. So in this world, we are going to have, sorry, I need to look back at my issue sheet because I did take some notes today. That was not it. I encourage you all, if you have any questions, please let me know. I don't know that there's too many people on the stream right now, but if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm more than happy to answer them. I really enjoy doing this, so yeah. Okay, so what we want is a world class that handles this kind of stuff. So we're going to actually make one more class right now. And we'll call that class GridSafe. So what GridSafe is going to do, make that an object. What GridSafe does is this will be the place where things are happening. It'll be where cells reside. It'll be where you know, other things such as predators or food or poison or viruses or bacteria reside. So what making this allows us to do is, in world we can have a matrix of all of our grid sites, and those grid sites can contain things like, so grid site can contain sorry about that. So grid site can contain a pointer to a cell, and this brings me back to yet another thing that I want to do. I want to make sure that we have a abstract base class that will encompass cells. It'll encompass oh, let's see, probably just cells and predators at the moment. Those are the only things that are going to have things like movement, and they'll have specific actions that can be taken. So actually, cells and predators are pretty darn close, now that I think about it. Yeah, we're gonna make an abstract base class. So abstract, what do we want to call this? We'll say abstract being. We'll have a type of object. And the next thing that we're going to do is come over to our handy dandy internet and look up C++. We'll just make sure that there's not something specific here, but UT we'll just say base class. So right now, I'm just not really sure what the best way to do this is. So my two options here, since I only have cell and predator that I'm planning on creating, what I could do is make them both cells and add another configuration bit to determine whether that cell is a predator or not. So if we go into support.h, we can look here. So what I'm doing now is looking through the code that we have here. The DNA data structure. See if there's any way that we can use a bit somewhere. I don't really like the idea of using any of these bits. And I have them in a really nice size right now, 32 and 64 bits. That's hard to beat. So for right now, I think what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of abstract being. Yeah. The reason behind that is we're just going to keep cells. I think we'll put predators in a later version of this, and if we want to do that, that's fine. For right now, we'll just focus on getting the cells working, because that's going to be the most difficult part, I think. And we don't need the added complexity of adding in a predator, as it were. So, what we'll do is, let's go to GridSafe. And in GridSafe, we're going to have a pointer to a cell. So for those of you who are relatively new to C++, or C, whatever it is, one of the interesting things about language is the difference between pointers and non-pointers. So, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this. From what I understand, a pointer, if you have a pointer pointing to something and you create a new object there, that will be put on the heap. And the heap has a huge amount of memory that you can use from. The stack, however, is of limited size, and I suppose actually, so stack variables are scoped, which means that if it's inside a function, as soon as the function gets it completes, it gets popped off the stack and it no longer exists. This is why you have to delete member variables. So pointers, I suppose, don't really matter. In this case, it's convenient for us. It gives us another way to, if we wanted to put the cell into some sort of other list or queue, we could do that. That wouldn't be too hard to do. And both could point at the same thing, as long as they're not interacting with it at the same time. That's when you run into problems. But so far, this isn't threaded. And probably what I'll end up doing is I'll just go through the grid sites anyway to do the moves. So anyway, we have a resident cell. And this can be null. In fact, when the grid site initiates, it will be null. When we do an initialize world, we can pass in a cell. So that's what we'll do. We need to add in our cell.h file. And you can see that changed the coloring there. We're going to have a signal here that's called changed, and what that will do, we're going to add in form the connected slots that, oh, this needs to be a return. Qt does it this way, so we'll do it that way too. Whatever. Okay, so let's see. So okay, pointer to this GridSafe. Inform the connected slot that this GridSafe has changed. And it may not be the most efficient way to do it, but we'll just have it recollect. We'll have all the dependent processes that use this recollect all the information, and yeah, that'll just make our lives easier later, and we will be able to thread this and do fun stuff with it. Okay, let's see, what else do we want to do here? Hey Unreal, how's it going? I am doing quite well. I'm having a hard time thinking about some of this stuff right now. It's just, yeah, it's interesting stuff, but it's all how do I manage some of the complexity to make it also be easy to adapt later on. Probably what I should do is just go for it and fix it later. It tends to actually work pretty well for me, so. Okay. So in this cell, that's a good point. Nobody else has to maintain it. So yeah, you are absolutely correct. So for this one, we will do something called a site modifier. And I don't think we're gonna make that one a pointer in this case. It's a member variable. I think I screwed this up somewhere else. Go in here. Yep, I did. So I want to rename this. Actually, these need to go back to either private or protected. We'll go private for right now. Thanks, are the levels okay on the music? Thank you much. So now we need to make a new class called site modifier. And once again, we come back to the same question. Do we want this to be an abstract class, or do we just want it to be some sort of like enumeration or something of that sort that just tells us whether it's food, poison, or tainted food? Which I guess yeah, so cells can have different ways of viewing the world. So since we do have food, poison, and tainted food will kill the cell. Food will... I'm trying to think how I want to do, because cells should have some sort of bonus for finding food. Poison will also kill. So, I mean, we could just go with poison or food, but the other thing that we could... I don't know. This is just me trying to think through this, so... Any thoughts? I guess... yeah, Moobot's there. I haven't done much with him, though. So... so if you do #OS, it'll tell you what operating system I'm using. Well, since I already have the data structure, I guess I'll just go ahead and implement those two things. So I'm gonna implement food, poison, and tainted food. And we'll just go ahead and do an enumeration for that. And we'll go back to the support.h file that we created. If I was running a project, I would be appalled to see this, but you know, I'm not, so that's fine. We'll call this enumeration modifier type, and we'll have food, we will have poison and tainted food. We'll go back to site modifier.h. We'll have a private we need to include support.h. Sudo plugin.h. Cool. We'll do private modifier type type underscore getting caught up in my cord. This might be a short stream tonight. I'm just realizing that I'm tired. So. So speaking of the music that that you mentioned being a nice touch, I was able to, if you go to YouTube, they actually have in their creator studio, you can download a bunch of Creative Commons stuff, and I downloaded a bunch of no attribution music. That way I can post this to YouTube as well and not have to worry about their copyright detection. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that being around. Let's see. We are just want to see if this will build. It shouldn't have any problem because I didn't put most of the stuff into the code, but does not name a type. There. Socket notifier. No, I did not. Oh. Yeah. Oh, site modifier. Oh, yeah, you need to go to cell.h. That's not cell.h. Say modifier.h. That should solve our problem. Cool. Okay, so this still builds. And basically what I want to do is just take a look at this. And watch the mesmerizing movements. Okay, so one thing that I learned today, in looking through this code, is kind of how this board works. So if we look through that, we find out that essentially there's no predefined grid on here. They're just filling in rectangles at specific places. So one thing that I will need to add for sure in this board is the ability to redraw, and that's where we'll call world. So when we resize, we'll need to redraw everything. So the world will need to contain a grid, a matrix. I wonder if Qt has matrix. Qt matrix. Obsolete. Okay. Well, we won't use that. Instead, what we'll use is debating between a vector, yeah, I think we'll use vector. So what this will allow us to do is just have a super easy interface. I won't have to make arrays of certain sizes. So the world will hold a bidirectional vector, so it'll be a vector of vectors, basically. And so in the world, so I think what I'm going to do tonight is just solely work on the viewport, because I think that'll make the next sessions a little easier. So if I can get this to display cells, random cells, I'll be pretty pleased with the work that I've done tonight. And then that'll make way for putting the business logic in later on, as far as how cells interact with their environment and do other things. We need to include GridSafe. And we're going to have a Q vector. I think this is probably a, yep, generic container. Cool. Templated, so we'll have a Q vector of Q vectors of grid sites. And we'll call this we'll call it the world. Yeah, that seems good. And actually, it's going to be static, and it's also not a slot, public. So we will call this. Actually, it's private. So this is a private member variable, static member variable, and I'll get into that in a second. Actually, I'll get into it right now. So the world we want to be able to access from everything. There are two ways to do that. You can make it be a singleton, which I still might do, or you can make everything static, and then you'd access that by typing things like world : what is here, coordinates. So that just calls the class, and it's got some static member variables such as world that you would be able to, that it would tell you, okay, well, there's a cell here. The other option is to have one object be created. I'm not quite as happy with that one though, because it's a little harder to reference. I guess I could just get in. Oh yeah, it'd just be a get instance. In all honesty, it's about 6 of one, half dozen of another. Let's just see what the benefits are. So for now, we'll just do static methods because frankly it's easier. Might not have any signals or slots. Okay, yeah, we're gonna do, yep, that's the difference. So what we'll need is, we'll need to be able to get the pointer to the world in order to do signals and slots. And that'll make sense as we go on with the project, but signals and slots deal with references, and it just makes life easier if I can say connect this to this. It disconnects world from anything else, which makes it a lot easier to deal with later on. So that being said, in order to make a singleton, what you have to do is you take the constructor and you make it private, so no one can call it, and then you make a public world pointer get instance and we'll probably also want a void doing this. That'll need to be static so I can get it from the class world itself. And it'll return a pointer to a new world. So essentially we'll just do return new world after we set it to so we'll need, this is annoying, there we go, the world pointer static, static, yes, static world instance. So design patterns are well known. If you go online and look up singleton design pattern, you'll be able to see what this is. There's a couple different ways to do it. This is my favorite way, where you have a static member variable. Will not be static anymore. You have a static member variable of the type that you're creating, and you call it instance, and when you say get instance, you check to see if instance is anything, and if it isn't, you go ahead and initialize it. So yeah, anyway, that's what we're doing, and That's get instance. We also have another one that we'll need to make called void here. Do I want that to be static? No, I don't. And the reason is, if I have a pointer, I don't really want to have to reinitialize it, or reset the pointer someplace else. This avoids issues if I call clear instance and I have multiple things referencing it, which I shouldn't, but if I do, it allows me to keep all those pointers in the same place, especially if I'm doing connections and stuff like that. It just makes it a lot easier. Granted, we're going to be deleting large swath. This should be the upper level, but I feel like this is the better way to go. So if I go to CPP void world here instance, this dot that's a problem. World instance. Why didn't you catch me on that one? So this dot world equals new q vector probably need type information. So q vector. GridSafe. That'll reinitialize that. That's good. GridSafe. I will return shortly. Okay, I think we're back. Okay, what are we doing? Okay, so Game of Life board draws each of our cells. One thing that I'm going to do in this is going to comment out a bunch of stuff. And the reason that I'm not going to delete it, because I want to reference it as we go along, especially in cell. So, go to Game of Life board, and let's start looking for things that we want to get rid of. We want to, pause is good, populate I don't think we need, look at that. Commit, change label, iteration. Oh. Okay. Yeah, so this will be one that we comment out now. Right. Yeah, but this is definitely stuff that we want to keep. In fact, I'm going to do that's from the parent object. So, we do want to keep this, but we're going to move this elsewhere. So this is going to go into world, and we'll create a public slot here. Slots can be used as functions, in case you haven't watched the previous videos of this. I know they're long. So a slot can be used as a function. So what we're going to do is create a slot, but first we're going to find a resting place for this bit of code that we have, so I don't accidentally copy and forget it. So we're going to create a public slot called void populate world and what that will do is just what it sounds like. It'll populate the world. So we'll go to world.cpp and do a void world populate world, and I managed to do it without actually needing to recopy anything. Okay, so one thing that I think we're going to change here is going to be qrand. Gotta say, I like the way he's doing this. Actually, what we'll do is we'll give this percentage. Where do we get that from? Died when you just moved it. Okay. Population ratio is population ratio. The pop ratio. Int. All I needed to know. So this is going to be int pop ratio. And for now, if we go here, do equals 40. That just sets a default value, so we'll default to 40%.
is he doing here? Oh, this is going to be different anyway. So we're going to have more private members. We'll have unsigned int world height. We'll just say height. And width. If I could type. That should allow us to also add depth if we want to. So, 4. Oh, that's another thing I need to set up. We're going to use a magical thing called for each. And then we're going to look up how to use this magical thing. For each. I forget. That might actually be a C++ 11 thing. Okay, perfect. That's easy. So for each U vector of type GridSafe, subvector in world for each grid site in subvector. So this will iterate over our entire world here. Let me just make sure that that's the correct syntax for this. Plus 11 for each. Oh, maybe it isn't. Qt for each loop. I don't see a for each loop in this. Also, this is Java. Something is calling Java iterator. That's weird. Let's see what their for each loop looks like. And where is it? For each. Is there a comma? Well, apparently it's not a colon. Okay, it's a function. Interesting. So the other thing that you can do is call this auto here. But I know what it is, and I want to force what it is. So for each site, this site will create a new cell. How did I decide to do that? I didn't. Okay, so what we'll do now is int So we're going to do something very similar to what the original creator of this did. We're going to basically get a random number. So int rand equals q rand and pop ratio is an int, so we'll mod by pop ratio +1. So that'll give us a number between 0 and population ratio. Actually, I want to do mod 100. So mod 101. That'll give us a number between 0 and 100. And then we'll use a ternary operator because I like the ternary operator. So if RND is less than pop ratio, otherwise don't do anything. This should be an if statement. Sorry, guys. For the readability of code, be an if statement. Okay. So, what this does is, well, first of all, get rid of this. It goes through each possible site, and okay, well, when we instantiate, we'll have to create the grid size. So this goes through each possible site that we have, and there's approximately a 40% chance, well, a pop ratio % chance that we will add a new cell, And that cell, if I remember correctly, is randomly generated when you create a new one. Unless, of course, you feed it DNA and behavior. Okay. So that's the start of our world here. So we're going to populate the world. What I want to do next, now granted, let's see. So populate world will add cells. The other thing that I want it to do is the pop ratio. We'll just do that for now. Eventually, I want to add in like food ratio as well. Modifier ratio so we'll do modifier ratios as well, but that'll be later on. Okay, so we populate the world with random cells. What I want to do next is go to we'll go back to goal board. We seem to be finding things there to do. So, actually, let's go to the definition here, just to make sure. Aha. They are dividing by 100. That should be okay. That shouldn't be necessary for us. However, I do want to see where that's used. It should be used somewhere else. Really? Someone should be connecting this somewhere. Go here. Connect. Goal board. That. Goal board. Set pop ratio. Why did he do that? Inconnect syntax doesn't work with overload method. Alright. Okay, so we have a world. Good. Okay, so we create a world instance, and now in, where was it that we were going here? Wherever, oh, when that's connected, connect world underscore, and then which one's overloaded? Is this overloaded? Oh, it is. Okay. Int top ratio void at top ratio int ratio. I'm not going to set a default value there, that doesn't make sense. This out of here. I don't know why we're not going there. Oh, that's because I changed. Populate world. Take that out. So is any of this making the slightest bit of sense? Anything that I need to explain any further? This isn't exactly a tutorial at this point, but if you have any questions, please ask. Let me go to Okay, now back to school board. Set H. Yeah, to be honest, I'm kind of out of my understanding as well. I'm completely making this up, and I'm expecting this to fail many, many times before I'm actually successful at any of it. So, we can learn together. Okay. We've done populate. So with this changing, what we want to do is, what are we connecting? We'll just call this directly, actually. So world, no, not word bit. World. Oh, I don't have. Go board. So luckily, this is a singleton. So I should be able to reference it in here as well. So I can do include world. Eventually I'll wake up. Okay, world pointer world. So world dot populate world. That'll populate our world, and then we will change these back to wherever they're supposed to be changed to. In this case, iteration is 0. So this change label, if you, I'll go to the original. Oops. Yeah. Okay. So if you go here, you'll see there's these labels, iterations, and alive cells under statistics here. What these change labels are doing is basically it's just setting iteration label to be to show the iteration number, and count alive cells. We actually do need to change that. And that would be in world that we do that. So in this case, let's see, what do I want to do with that? I have a feeling, yeah, this has to be defined in here, right? Oh, come on. Oh, that's just a signal. Never mind. So change label we define here, and what I can do. So if we go to goalboard CPP, it's got to be connected somewhere. Oh, it's probably connected in window. So all we need to do is go to goalboard and copy this particular signal. Then we go to world and we put that in our signals. And then we go back to goalboard. Come on. We go back down to goalboard. Iterate, we're definitely going to need to change. But I digress. So in populate, we've got these change labels. What we'll do here is we'll just copy this emission and go to world.cpp. So after we've done this, we'll emit change label, and this will change the label, alive cells label, to that value. So then what we need to do is go to full window, and where we're doing all these signal creations, we have a change label. So we'll do a connect world change label this ampersand goal window change label. And if we look at change label over here, it says, okay, if we have iteration, if we have some iteration or some label that looks like either iteration label or a live cells label, change the text to label. So that's essentially what they're doing. It, like I said, this just makes it super easy to go through and do exactly what I'm doing. Shove in something else that will change those labels instead of using the originally designed software. And in all honesty, we want this as only part of the world. We can actually remove this signal. going to go to world.cpp and iteration equals 0 when we create this world, or when we clear it. Actually, because these two are going to share, let's just do initialize. That'll save us some time. Void world. Init. Then this stuff will go in there. I like that better. Okay. We'll go back to world.h. Oh, we need to set these. So we've got height, width, and pop ratio that we need to set. Height equals, I wonder what the default is. Let's go to billboard. There's height and width. Slot, which means here. It doesn't look like that's been connected. Tells me that it probably wasn't. Which is fine. He probably just didn't. Whoever made this probably didn't get the chance to actually do it. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's getting used anywhere. That was probably something that he had in mind, but never got around to completing. Just because of the way this was written. So. Set forward size. Well, set size is good enough for me. So we'll go back. What are they doing? Oh, I was looking to see what the base size is. Undo. Board. I want this to be true. Where is your width set? Don't know. $100. Okay. There it is. About 100. So these are just some default values, mostly because I don't want to try and deal with settings files right now. Those can be changed, and in fact we'll make those changeable. One of the things that I want to do. So if we go back to Bullboard, PPP, we have populate, and the only thing that we should need here is grid.clear world.populate and then update. Where is this used? So actually, we don't want rely on this populate function. What we want to do is go to, first we want to go back here and just see what we're doing. So we want to use this slot instead. And the reason for that is, whoa, sorry about that. We want, like I said earlier in this stream, we're trying to separate functionality from display. So what we're going to do is go into window where they're doing the create signals, and where they have populate, we're going to change this to world underscore and then world populate world. So that's going to call this whenever we hit something that causes it to be populated. I'm not sure if that's used anyplace else. Hope. Not. I'm hoping that they emit something instead. Like we might have one. Main window. Because it has to do it at some point. Because when you open up the window, it already is populated. So that tells me that either they're emitting something somewhere or they're calling it directly. Actually, maybe that might be done in goal board. Does that get called in the constructor? Yes, it does. So what we're going to do for now is we're going to change this to a signal. And what that will do is it will allow us to come over here and connect that up. Connect. Board. Board. Populate. World. World. Populate world. Now we have both of those things connected. If either of those events are emitted, it will it'll populate the world. Now we can go back to world.cpp. Make sure that this is correct. Looks like it's right. And then we have to so what we do now is we go here and say void Actually, this should be done in the header file. So we're going to have a signal called world changed, and that'll just inform anybody who needs to do something with that, hey, world's changed, do something about it. In this case, let's see. What do I want to do? Well, this is a little bit tighter coupling than I would like, but I'm going to let the classes that are depending on world changed, I'll let them get the world information for themselves. As far as how I want to display the information, somehow I need to give whoever is using world some way to read our world map. Actually, I want to name this too. Refactor. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to call it a night for the streaming. It's been 2 hours, so I'm ready to just be alone with my thoughts for a bit. So thank you guys for watching. I'm planning on posting this up on YouTube as well. You can find this code repository, which I will update after this stream, at github.com/esarver/cellularautomata. If you have any ideas or questions or comments, feel free to submit an issue on this site, and let me know what questions you have. Let me know what comments you have. Actually, let me go ahead and make a new label. Actually, there's already a label called question. So if you have a question, create an issue, label it question, and I'll get around to looking at it as soon as I possibly can. Hopefully I can cover those either. I'll cover it in a comment, but I'll also cover it later in another stream. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and have a good night.